I do want to remind you that this is recorded. We do upload these to our YouTube channel, just so you're aware as well. Okay, without further ado, we're going to turn it over to our first expert, and that is Desy. Desy, will you go ahead and introduce yourself really quick?
Yeah, thanks, Rose. Hi, everybody. My name is Desy Schoenewies. I am a professor of art at Black Hill State University. I also have a background in K through 12 art education. I taught elementary for a year, I taught middle school for 6 years, and I taught high school for 3 years prior to my venture into higher education. Absolutely love teaching every grade level. Students always ask me what's my favorite, and I say all of them. Every single one of them have their pros. Middle school was fantastic. Had a lot of fun with middle school as well. So that's always surprising for people, which is why I spent 6 years in middle school. I did spend a stint in San Francisco for a little bit at City College of San Francisco, but Black Hills is my home. I've been here for since 2012. And yeah, the rest of the bio is on the screen. So there you go.
Awesome. We're so excited that Desi, you agreed to this. So I took many years ago art methods from Desi, and it was just so enlightening for me. I took that at the same time I took PE methods. And I remember having a conversation with Dr. Derby, who, if you guys were fortunate to see her last February, about how disappointed I was that art methods and PE methods weren't a requirement for an early childhood major at Black Hills State, when I thought, what better time for teachers to be incorporating like movement and art? And so that is something that I definitely, when I started here and developing trainings, I wanted to pour into you amazing early childhood teachers and give you guys these experiences and opportunities to know what you can do. So thank you again, Desi, for signing on.
You're welcome.
Okay, in-house expert Jen. Jen, will you introduce yourself now?
Sure can. My name is Jen Ennis. I'm an early childhood specialist, not coach for the Starting Strong program here at Early Childhood Connections. I've been working in the early childhood education field for about 18 years. Most of that time was spent as a preschool teacher, and I loved it so much. I did a couple years as a director at a center. I graduated from Black Hills State University. Previous to that, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I minored in commercial art. So art's always been very near and dear to my heart as well. My dad is a commercial artist, so I grew up around a lot of creativity and art supplies and different mediums and things. So he helped really foster my love for art. I'm married. I have two kids of my own. We really like to spend time in the Black Hills. So this is really a great place to be. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Jen. Jen is a very creative person, so I was really excited when she joined us at UCC, and I knew this would be something she could speak very fluently to. Okay, so you got to meet the experts. Now let's identify the problem. So, what is the problem when we think about art in early childhood? It's probably just our confidence and competence in being able to have the time and ability to teach it to children, right? So hopefully tonight you'll walk away with some more of that. Art touches every corner of a child and human's experience. So art in the early years is it isn't just something that we add on, it's essential, right? It's about meaning making, it's about exploration, imagination, self-expression, and children get to test boundaries, and we know they do that every day, right? But in art, they get to do it in safe ways, in ways that they get to explore and push the limits that they're not pushing your buttons, right? They learn how to communicate their emotions, they construct logic, and they also let you know this is how I see the world. It's deeply relational. It is how we honor them and how we say, I see you. But like I said at the beginning, it takes time, it takes intention, it makes you hold space for these opportunities. So hopefully tonight, as you listen to Desi and Jen discuss the importance of it, all the things that you can do with it, you'll start to carve out that intentional space and hold space for the children that you provide care for. So let's take a moment to dive into the principles. To start us off tonight, we're going to turn it over to Desi.
All right, thank you, Rose. Obviously, we have only a limited amount of time, so we can't really get into the larger scope of child development and everything. But what I do want to get into is going to be just to hit upon and touch upon some topics about what we can expect to see in our kids' art at different stages of their development, particularly motor development, as well as visual acuity that happens at various stages. So, Rose, will you be clicking two slides? Awesome. Okay, great. And so what we have here is, yes, art does engage the mind of individuals of every age. When you think about art, it is the whole of human existence. Everything we touch, everything we encounter, has basically been touched by another artist or a person, designer who has been thinking about the functionality of things or the attractiveness of things. And that's no different for kids. Kids really also think about, ooh, I love this. I want to touch this. I want to be part of this. I want to make marks. So we'll kind of dive into that a little bit as we go. Obviously, of course, art is a means for individual self-expression. Children engaged in art learn skills and analytical reasoning. We'll get into that as well. And of course, developing confidence. The more kids can develop confidence in their lives, especially learning about themselves, art is a great space for children to learn about their own individuality. It's one of the few subjects, in K-12 teaching. It's one of the few subjects that I always like to say that you want to have 25 different responses from a class of 25 different people, right? So next slide, please. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how we even hold a utensil, right? How we hold things. Even as young kiddos make marks, how they hold a pen or pencil, kind of also develops in their stages of development too, right? When they are first grabbing onto things, they want to use their whole hand, their whole paw, the whole thing, and start kind of just manipulating things this direction. By age 2 or age 3, they start to really process the world around them. They start to pick up on the fact that mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, they're holding pencils in a different way. They're kind of holding it like this, what we call digital grasp. So they kind of get the sense that they should be holding their pencil this way, but they don't really quite get there. So they start just using the tips of their fingers or their digits, right? So they start to just kind of grab at the digits, but they're learning it. By the time they get into late preschool, even early kindergarten, 3 to 4, 4.5, 5-ish, they start modifying that grasp, and that's when they start to learn how to write letters, how to write numbers, how to draw circles and draw squares and draw kind of things as well. So you start to see that modified grip and then finally our tripod grasp. Okay, Rose, next. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our youngest art makers, right? 0 to 2, our scribble bots. They are in it for the immediacy, right? They love the joy of just picking up something and, oh, there's a color and the color is there and they've made an action and that is exciting and they do it over and over and over. And then they do it on their paper, then they do it on the walls, right? And they draw on the floors and the next thing you know, you're chasing them around with crayons. But at this stage, it's that immediacy, and they start to kind of get an understanding of I can do something, I'm in control of something. And that's where art really becomes very exciting for them. And of course, they're learning so much at the 0 to 2 age, right? And they're learning just the very basic mechanics of language. They're learning that people are speaking to each other. So they're starting to associate somewhat what they're doing and with a visual excuse me, audio. So you might start to see, next slide. You might start to see our little scribble bots, yeah, starting to babble while they start to work, while especially age 2, 1.5 to 2 years, they might just start to say mom, they might just say dad, they might say tree, but then they might forget that this was actually a drawing of mom or this was actually a drawing of dad. But again, they are starting to just make marks for the joy of it. And they also do a lot of dots too, where they kind of bang, bang, bang the markers on the table as well as the scribbling. Next one. Thanks, Rose. All right, so now we're getting into the manipulative stage, ages 2 to 5. Yes, we know 2 to 5-year-olds are manipulative and being very cute, but the manipulative stage happens to be how they manipulate their drawing and writing media, right? How they actually start to manipulate material into doing things that they start to perceive, right? So at this stage, the manipulative stage, they start to create symbols. So our age 2 to 5, that's when they start to really start to associate, draw symbols, and then they can remember what they are drawing. So things like people, things like trees, things like family groupings, these are things that start to show up in very symbolic ways, right? Like we can kind of see some of the stick figures on our screen here. Um, and they're all over the place. They have no sense of ground plane whatsoever. They're filling up the pages, but you start to see some recognizable things, and the child remembers. They can remember that they are drawing mom or they draw dad. Go ahead and click to the next one, Rose. I wanted to point out. Yeah, so some symbols here that they start to see. Now, they're taking in a lot of information and overlapping some information. So how to write their names are symbols. So letters become symbols, as well as shapes are symbols, right? Our circles, our squares, our triangles, those kinds of things, as well as people, sun, birds, all these kinds of symbols start to come together. Sometimes these symbols begin to overlap each other. And you can, I love these sort of like potato, I like to call them potato people, these sort of humanoids that we start to see where arms extend out of the face. We see that a lot at this stage. Rose? All right. This one I wanted to show you because this young artist is one of my nieces. Her name is Alex. You can kind of see the letters Alex at the top, Alex, and then some of the other letters start to get jumbled together. Again, at this stage, Alex was about 5 years old. Alex also has 5 sisters, and so I'm sure you can tell them all apart, right, in this one. But she was certainly remembering who was who, even though she's kind of using the same color for each one. But she's the oldest, so she was kind of the biggest. But overall, you can see that she kind of used a lot of the same symbols, even though she remembers which one was her next youngest sister, and so on and so forth. Next, Rose. All right. Just really quickly. Oh, did we skip? Is there another one in there? Schematic stage. Next one. Sorry. Next one. Next one. Next one. Um, Middle childhood, 6 to 9. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I thought that I thought a couple slides were getting confused a little bit. That's okay. So now our symbols start to become contextualized, right? They start to actually represent some kinds of attributes to a person. So now you can kind of start to see this family grouping here, where mom has longer hair, the dog is brown, the child's dog must be brown, right? You can kind of start to see some unique attributes, ages 6 to 9. I know we're kind of getting into middle childhood, and our topic is mostly early childhood. But and notice too that these don't also cut off right at age 5 to age 6 they graduate. It's also very much a flow into. You have a little bit of ground plane starting to emerge around kindergarten, first grade, where they start to establish a ground plane. Can you click to the previous slide, Rose? Sorry. Thank you. This one here. Again, kind of going back into these into the idea that 6 to 9 year old children are starting to emerge with these individual characteristics. So this is an image of my husband, and my stepdaughter at age 6 drew this picture of him. So she is utilizing things like selective color for his face, selective color for his 5 o'clock shadow, and of course picking up on his forehead wrinkles, which you could tell was very pleased about in this image. So I wanted to point out that sometimes children, they start to see things that maybe we don't always want to see, but they will put those into the schematic stage because it is all about telling the details of the story. Next 2 slides, Rose. Great. And here's what I'm talking about as far as telling the full story. The picture on the bottom is an illustration from a child who spent a day at the fair. And he made sure that he put in every detail of the fair. From the big top, there was a tractor pull within the big top. You can also see the balloon man cart. You see one of the other events, and then you also see a Ferris wheel, all shoved together in the same day. But he wanted to make sure that he included every single detail. The image on the top, you see the front side of the house, but you also see the inside of the house opened up as well, where you have people, you have a kitchen. So again, the schematic stage, they are trying to show you everything about a story, and they're really starting to tell narratives at this stage. Rose, next. All right. Other kinds of symbols that we start to see at this stage, we start to see faces in the sun, we start to see blue sky at the top, we see green at the bottom, and you might even see this very early on in early childhood too. As kids start to kind of look around and they start to see the world around them, they start to mimic other adults and what they draw and what they do. And so they're going to start kind of picking up on some of those same kind of mimics, right? So our hearts, faces, those kinds of things, butterflies that we might do with the letter B and a backwards letter B, those kinds of things that children will start to mimic as well. All right, Rose. And finally, as we begin to, as kids move even into that schematic stage, one thing I wanted to point out is that beginning to, as the kids begin to create art and fill up whole pages, they start to become a little bit more confident in how they see the world. And so we want to make sure that we are celebrating all kinds of differences, celebrating those details. And even though going back to the kid that put in that whole fair, that Ferris wheel maybe not be, at the same side as the balloon cart, the fact that the kid remembered those things, those are the things that we should be celebrating at this stage. There's time later on for things like proportion and that kind of stuff. But in this early childhood stages, we are happy that they are telling stories. Right. All right, next. I think that's the end of me.
Yes, thank you, Desi.
Thanks.
I hope everyone was able to take away some of their individual, because you guys teach a wide range, right? We have infant teachers on, and then we have some school age teachers on. So I hope you guys were able to take away where your individual students are at there. Thank you, Desi. All right, we're going to turn it over to Jen.
Yeah, right. I just have to comment, the schematic stage was my favorite. I'd always get portraits done by my students. I always had just the craziest, wildest hair in every single one of them, and they were all very humbling, but I loved them very, very much. So,
That's
okay.
awesome.
Yeah. Um, I'm going to discuss a little bit about process and product, how different they are. In early childhood, the process of making art is the exploration, the experimentation, and the discovery. And this is where the real learning happens for them. We emphasize things like, what are you noticing? How did you make that color? Instead of asking them, what is it that you made? And we kind of want to shift the value from performance to authentic expression. So this is what I'm going to highlight in the next couple slides. Okay, so art is so much more than just putting out paint or crayons. In early childhood classrooms, it serves as a powerful tool for the exploration, creativity, and so much learning. Rich art experiences in the classroom allow children to engage with a variety of materials in open-ended ways. They get to choose what they make and how, and the focus here should be on the process, like I said, rather than creating a final product. This approach encourages children to make choices, take risks, express their ideas and emotions, and then it also helps develop problem-solving skills. They also, will build up their fine motor skills by using paintbrushes and the writing utensils. They can practice their spatial awareness when they decide where to place objects on paper. They start to understand concepts like above, below, next to, and between. They discover sizes. They learn how to navigate, fill, and organize space. So they get to explore concepts, color, shape, texture, and pattern. And then they can also start using mental rotation, depth perception when they start exploring 3D art. All art will also support language development as children will be talking about their work. It fosters social emotional growth through their collaboration. And ultimately, art just helps create a joyful, meaningful learning environment where their imagination and their individuality are celebrated and every child's voice matters. So this next slide here kind of talks about art as play-based. So again, some of the core principles, the process, we want to focus on the experience of creating. So much is being learned through the process of creating art. Something to think about if you were doing a study of weather in your class and you want to do a project involving the sun. Instead of asking children to make identical paper plate suns using yellow paint and pre-cut strips of yellow paper for rays, maybe instead provide a whole bunch of various materials like yellow tissue paper, markers, strings, glitter, paint, and then just let them create their own version of sunshine. So each one will be unique and each one will be very beautiful. So I think they'll get a little bit more out of that process. The next core principle is to make sure that their experience is going to be open-ended. So offer materials and encourage the experimentation without giving them step-by-step instructions. Children are innately curious, and when they're presented with open-ended materials, given the freedom to experiment without any preconceived outcome, they kind of instinctively tap into their huge imaginations and they can develop their own ideas. So as an example for this, you can either have a table set up with a whole bunch of items and an invitation to create. Sometimes kiddos find it more helpful if they have a prompt. If you were to set out a tray with watercolors, droppers, cotton pads, and salt and just say, I wonder what might happen when you mix these together. This kind of invitation will spark their creativity and critical thinking. The next principle we're going to discuss here is child-led. So allowing the children to focus their interests and make choices about their work is very important. If a child chooses to work with watercolor, they might begin by painting with dots, but they soon notice that the colors are bleeding into each other on the wet paper, which might, fascinate them. So they might start experimenting and add more water. They might tilt the paper, layer more colors. This is just a very enriching exercise for them. So, excuse me. And finally, we just want to really make sure that it's a joyful and meaningful experience. Art should be something that is just engaging and connected to the child's life. So by embracing these principles, you can create an environment where art becomes meaningful, playful, and enriching. This next slide here, I just threw together a couple examples of some play-based art activities that you could do in your classroom. Sensory painting is a really fun one. You can use various textures like shaving cream, sand, and rice. You can put into paint to create different tactile experiences for them. They're each very different. Shaving cream is very smooth and soft. Sand can be kind of a rough, texture, and then rice will elevate it even more with like a 3D kind of feel to it. Open-ended construction is nice. You can provide a variety of cardboard boxes, blocks, tape, and invite them to build and create 3D structures. Nature-based art is one of my favorites. You can go outside and just kind of collect anything you might find, leaves, twigs, stones, pine cones, and just use them to create collages or sculptures, kind of like what's shown here on the slide. Make and play activities are projects where children can create props for imaginative play, like puppets or making costumes. And then that can kind of roll into this next one, which is role playing with art, where you use materials to create scenarios, characters for storytelling, making a play or a story. So one other thing I like to note is to make sure that you facilitate, don't lead. So take a step back and allow the children to discover on their own. You can ask guiding questions like, what are you making? Or what would happen if we do this instead? To engage with them in their creative process, but just make sure to let them take the lead. All right. Next, I want to talk a little bit about collaborative art. This is always really fun because they get to work together. It has a ton of social and emotional benefits. It builds essential skills like teamwork, communication, and empathy, and then it enhances cognitive development through problem solving. They get to be super creative. It fosters a sense of community and belonging. It gives children a platform for self-expression. It improves their emotional well-being in a supportive environment. It also just helps children navigate new ideas and then gain confidence in their own contributions. So Teamwork. Children share materials, they take turns, they work together to create and achieve a common goal. Um, Communication skills, as we kind of talked about, it encourages children to express their ideas, listen to others, and explain their ideas to the group. Working with peers helps children appreciate different perspectives and styles, which can foster empathy and understanding. Children can express a range of emotions in a safe space and learn to regulate them in social contexts. A teacher can be there to help out if need be. So that's kind of a nice, safe area. It also, like we said, contributes to a sense of belonging, um, giving them a sense of community, making them feel valued. They made something really big and really cool together, so they can be proud. I helped create that. Cognitive benefits too. Um, Exposure to multiple ideas can spark new ways of thinking. It encourages them to experiment with different artistic techniques maybe they didn't know about or hadn't thought about trying. Um, Children encounter creative challenges and they learn to work together to find solutions, which is a really good life skill to have. Um, Collaborative art requires children to pay attention, stay motivated, and use critical thinking to develop their artwork as a team. And then, of course, it builds their confidence. They can see their contributions incorporated into something larger. And a lot of times they will receive positive reinforcement from their peers. They're all excited to work together. So all of these highlight the benefit of open-ended, no restrictions, play-based exploration. Um, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how art can benefit the foundational thinking skills in young children next. So art can engage executive function, planning, focus, flexibility, and persistence. It encourages children to think critically, experiment with cause and effect, and then revise ideas in real time. Let's see. Okay, so what do children learn from the arts? There isn't just one single answer to a question. Children can learn that problems have multiple solutions. A very simple explanation for that is if children were asked, can you draw a tree? One child may use green and brown, and another may fill the sky with rainbow leaves. Both are valid and very beautiful. Um, Also, people view the world differently. Art teaches empathy and perspective taking. So, if a teacher were to read a story to the class and then ask each child to paint how it made them feel, guarantee no two paintings will look alike. It highlights different emotional takeaways from the story and just their different views on the world. So, art is a nonverbal way of expressing yourself. So, children can communicate their emotions, experiences, or ideas that they may not have words for yet. So you might have a shy kiddo that creates a bold, colorful painting after a field trip, expressing excitement that they didn't want to share out loud. Sometimes it's easier for kids to put thoughts on paper or to create something to express themselves. Sometimes little changes can make a big difference. So children learn that small adjustments like color, shape, or texture in their artwork can transform a whole creation. If they had a stormy sky picture and they decided just to paint a few white dots, suddenly it turns into a whole new snowfall scene and it completely changes the picture. So something small makes a big difference. Experiencing a work of art can inspire an emotional reaction. Children develop emotional intelligence by recognizing and responding to beauty, mood, or meaning. While looking at a painting of a lonely figure, a child may say, "She looks sad. I want to draw her a friend." So just kind of putting herself in the photo there. Art is one of the richest tools we have for helping children make sense of the world and themselves. Through creative expression, they learn not just about colors and shapes, but about emotions, choices, and perspectives, and communication. Okay, this one's a little bit more in depth about how people learn, and we can kind of use this to help know the right way to go about expanding on the children's learning as they explore and play and create. So this taxonomy was created by Benjamin Bloom. A taxonomy is just a system of classifying things. So Bloom's desire was for educators to have a way to classify thinking, understanding, and learning, and to also measure and organize what they teach. So this consists of 6 levels, from simplest on the bottom, which is remembering, and most complex is creating at the top. And I'm just going to kind of go through it a little quickly, hopefully not too quickly, but the very bottom we have the remember, which is recalling facts or other information, memorizing or repeating information. Next level up is understanding or comprehension. This is just simple understanding or the ability to describe or explain something. Application, inferring or applying information from one situation to another. Next is analyzing or breaking down parts of the whole and understanding their relationship, so you can compare and contrast or categorize things. Next is evaluating or putting together parts to make a meaning, to be able to assess or critique something. And then finally, up at the top, is create, which is making judgments about the value of something. You're able to invent or develop or generate something new. So while higher level questioning and thinking is always encouraged, it's important to note that each level is important and it builds upon the previous level. Also, each level has its own value. So another thing to note is that children don't necessarily move through these levels in a systematic way, from lowest to highest in order. The taxonomy illustrates that children need a foundation in the basic facts and information to be able to use their knowledge at a higher level. So, for example, you can't expect somebody to analyze something if they don't quite understand what the meaning is. So, the higher levels of the taxonomy help teachers understand how to ask children thoughtful questions that scaffold and extend their learning and encouraging children to think more critically. So, high level questions. So these are just things we can use, like I said, to kind of get the child's brain flowing, you know. A high level question is always a question that each child will answer in their own way. So they're not a yes or a no question. They're not questions that have an obvious answer. They're not questions that only have one answer either. Though these questions demonstrate a child understands language and is paying attention, that they can count or identify numbers, shapes, colors, they don't offer opportunities for children to think deeply. So in contrast, the high-level questions are ones that invite them to apply what they've already learned, to evaluate something, and to express their unique ideas. High-level questions are always questions that they'll answer in their own way. And it's using what they know, what they've learned, instead of just recalling rote information. Most importantly, make sure the high-level questions you're asking are developmentally appropriate for the age and stage of the child. For example, most 3-year-olds are primarily pretty concrete thinkers, which means their speech and thinking are very literal, which focuses on what's physically in front of them. An example I like to give for that is if you say it's raining cats and dogs, like it was earlier today, they might run to the window and actually think there are cats and dogs falling from the sky. So once they're about 4 or 5, they begin to think a little bit more abstractly. So you can use different verbiage and higher level questions for them. This next slide here, this is one that I included in the handouts that were emailed out. These are just ways we can inspire higher level thinking while they participate in art. So this is really focused on asking things while they're creating. And just to go over a couple of, and you can see each level has a few examples. So for the remember stage, you can just say, what colors did you use in your painting, to see if they can recall that. Understanding, explain how you made purple for your painting when you started with only red, yellow, blue, black, and white paint. Applying, what kind of building might you see this material? For the analyze stage, what do you think might happen if you made your sculpture taller or shorter? For evaluating which part of your mural are you most proud of and why? And then finally, for create, what types of artwork are you interested in creating for the cover of your All About Me book? Now, the options are endless there. Okay. This next one, we're going to talk a little bit about creativity, and how kiddos have confidence when they have choices. Children thrive when they're given freedom to choose materials and techniques. Choice making nurtures confidence, autonomy, and intrinsic motivation. When adults allow children to lead the creative process, they communicate that they trust the child's capability. Art is one of the places where we celebrate differences and different perspectives. We want different responses and different artworks, so that's what we're looking for here. Um, we're going to talk a little bit about tinker trays and loose parts. A tinker tray is a compartmentalized tray used to organize and present loose parts, which are small, open-ended materials with no specific instructions or predefined use. Children can use creative and imaginative play to create. The concept is based on the loose parts theory, which was by the architect Simon Nicholson. It states that the more variables in a play environment, the more creativity and inventiveness children will exhibit. So this is truly an open-ended experience. You just present an assortment of materials in a tray, and you allow children to create whatever they want, whatever they can imagine. This aligns perfectly with play-based art's focus on the process rather than the product, and it encourages creative problem solving and joyful discovery. Introducing a tinker tray is often an invitation to explore and create. You can start without direction, especially for young kiddos like toddlers. It's best just to let them freely explore the objects. Just kind of make note and observe what materials they're drawn to and how they're using them. And then you can go and try and set a theme. You can organize by color, shape, or have a theme like nature, under the sea. And this can kind of guide their exploration without defining a final product. You can also pair these with other materials. So you can combine your loose parts with other items to inspire specific artistic activities. So you can throw in some Play-Doh or kinetic sand. You can use the loose parts to create impressions or decorate sculptures. You can add paint or stamp pads. Really, the possibilities are endless. Here's just kind of an illustration for the art area. If you had loose parts like buttons, fabric, cardboard, feathers, glue, scissors, maybe a little boy walks over and begins exploring the materials without specific instructions. Maybe he'll pick up a piece of cardboard and say, hey, you know what? This looks like a robot's head. Maybe he begins searching around and finds two washers and decides those would make good eyes. A shiny silver wrapper would make a good mouth. Maybe he can use some pipe cleaners for robot wires. And he might pause to rearrange pieces, try different placements, occasionally change his mind, but decide this is what I want to do. If another kiddo comes by and asks what you're doing, he can say, this is a robot. He can see in the dark. These are his night vision eyes. And then maybe that might spark more, I'll add some glitter glue to make them glow. So this experience is very fun, organic, and just kind of picture this experience opposed to giving step-by-step instructions on how to create a craft, how much more they're getting out of that. So tinker trays are super easy to create. They're little to no cost. You can use items you already have or you just find. You can use silverware organizers, muffin tins, ice cube trays, or even egg cartons to put things in. And you can, like I said before, you can have a theme like nature. You can put a whole bunch of twigs, stones, flowers, leaves. You can do a whole bunch of different noodles. Maybe you want to dye them colors, put some glue with it. Or you can do, recyclables, bottle caps, paper clips, fabric scraps. Again, the possibilities are endless. So Um, Next, I'm going to talk pretty quickly about Eckers. Some of you may know a little bit about this, but this is a good resource in offering some ideas and guidelines for open-ended supplies in your art area. Eckers is an early childhood environmental rating scale. It's a set of tools used to assess and improve the quality of the early childhood environment. So these skills evaluate factors like teacher interactions with the children, the learning materials in the classroom, and just kind of the overall environment to make sure children's developmental needs are being met. This is a small chunk of the Eckers, specifically looking at the art area. These are just some items that they suggest that you should have available to children if you have a high quality preschool classroom environment. And then I'm just going to kind of read through a few of these. Maybe you can see if you have a few of these in your classroom. If not, maybe you can add them. They ask that at least one material from each category is present. So in the drawing section, you could have chalkboards, crayons, markers, colored pencils, some sort of paint, be it finger paints, tempera paints, watercolors, some 3D items like boxes, clay, pipe cleaners, cardboard pieces, wood scraps, and then things for making collages, buttons, cotton balls, feathers, glue, glitter, stickers, and then tools to use too, like brushes, rulers, scissors, rollers, all sorts of things. And I believe this was another one that we sent out so you guys can have a copy of that and just kind of maybe evaluate some of the supplies that you all have in your classroom. So, right.
Okay. Thank you, Jen.
You're
We're going to
welcome.
turn it back over to Desi.
All right, great information, Jen. This next section will be a little bit shorter, but yet still quite important, and that's the adult's role to observe, support, wonder. Obviously, the adults are we're not directors here as in the art process. We are basically here to help facilitate and bring out the child's joy, the child's innovation, their curiosity, and so forth. So the importance is going to be on the kind of questions and the kinds of language that we have with children. So we ask questions based on materials to kind of get them to maybe identify some of the materials that they're using to see if they can correlate this is paint, this is clay, this is these things. But they also have them as far as what they're making, allowing the child to speak to what they are making. So rather than saying, oh, I see that you are making a dragon. If the child is not making a dragon, then they're going to wonder, oh, wait a minute, I must be doing it wrong. Especially early childhood, there are no right or wrong answers, right? It is about exploring and it's about play. So therefore, allowing them to say, what they see. Allow the child to say what they see. Allow the child to say what they make. So, for example, oh, I really like your picture. Can you tell me more about it? Asking those more questions, right? I don't know if you guys remember in Finding Nemo, the seagulls that say more, mine, 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 mine. That's the adult role, right? Asking for more. Ask for more information from your kids. So rather than the mine, it's more, more, more. So tell me more. Tell me more about the color you chose. Tell me more about this object here. Tell me more about why you picked these objects out. Tell me why if there's something they're not liking. Tell me why you don't like it, and offer encouragement too. So having that conversation, bringing in those inviting questions, will help the child kind of understand and develop their own confidence in what they're doing. Those kinds of questions goes back into, and I want to kind of tie some of this information into what Jen was talking about with Bloom's taxonomy. And again, at the highest level of Bloom's taxonomy was create. I hope everybody remembered that from that particular slide. When we are creating, we are problem solving from start to finish. And it doesn't matter if a child is playing with a sensory table, if they are utilizing Legos, things that are sort of temporary in structure, or if it is a product that is an art that goes home with the parent, kind of situation, everything that they're doing, they're problem solving. They're thinking about what can I do with this thing in a new way. And that is the most important thing about art is seeing and experiencing something in a new way, in a way that they see it, in a way that that is unique for them. So again, with Bloom's taxonomy being that highest level of thinking, there's also what we call in K-12 the depth of knowledge construction, right? Where you have level one of recall. We have level two is graph and collaborate. Categorize ideas. Level three is strategic thinking. Level four is innovating and designing. And level four thinking, Bloom's taxonomy, all of those highest levels of critical thinking skills happens at that create level. So we as adults, our role is to make sure that we are supporting that creative level by asking questions, asking those kinds of Socratic method questions. If you remember anything about Socrates and how in philosophy we ask questions, right? The big question of why. Even your kiddos, you can ask questions about their imagination. Why should this happen? Why are we innovating these things? Why are we? I see that you're drawing. Tell me more about your drawing. I see that you are putting things together. Tell me more about why you're putting these together. And allowing the children to tell their stories through the process. It helps them think about and problem solve their process. Again, with art, we start from nothing and we make something, we make a thing, right? Or it may be a temporary thing and it might be a permanent thing, but there's always a thing. So asking those questions along the way is really important, and that's our guidance. Finally, I also want to say too that our goal is to also create a safe environment too. The kinds of things that we establish in our classroom, of course, we facilitate these experiences, but we also want to make sure that students are safe to tell their stories, right? That it is a good place to tell stories. And so making sure that students are have an understanding about their materials that they're using these things safely, especially early childhood, making sure that things and parts are not too small, of course, but making sure that they're not only that the things are not only safe in handling, but also safe in being having a space for the children to tell openly the stories so that every adult in their lives has an awareness of what's going on in their life. So so you're an observer, you're a supporter, and of course you are helping them engage in their curiosity. So, okay. And finally, as far as strengthening relationships and community, my philosophy about art is that we don't just make art for in a bubble, like just to exist in a bubble. We make art to share to the world. We all artists, you know, our I is all of us are trying to communicate something. We may not always be as eloquent and verbally speaking our worlds and our ideas and thinking. So art is just another facilitator of communication, right? We speak, we write, but we also have a visual communication. It is our visual language. And so how it shares and strengthens our communities, what art does is for the young age, for our young learners, it strengthens the home community. Um, while having art experiences are important, having some art products come home, having some art become heirlooms for the families is really important. It helps students and young learners really develop a connection to their families. It helps students and young learners really understand where they come from culturally, societally, and also their own personal histories. Um, I have had over my years of teaching, I've countless parents have told me that they've framed and hung artwork in their hallways, in their living rooms. I've had students at the college age say, "Oh yeah, my parents still have my kindergarten piece," or I'll run into a former parent from a child that I've had many years ago and say, "Oh, I remember when you taught this fifth grade project, and I still have it hanging in my home." The artwork becomes heirlooms, and the art becomes so important for families. Uh, a trigger warning, I'm going to talk briefly about uh, a situation where a child had passed. So please pause if you cannot if you cannot. But I've had the unfortunate experience of having a student pass away while I was teaching. The very first thing that the parents came to school to collect was the artwork from the child. Um, the parents felt that the artwork, of course, was, the where the child was in that moment in time. Meeting with that was heartbreaking, but at the same time, it was, of course, um, the most precious thing to that family. And so, therefore, they had that thing that their child made. Um, so, therefore, the for me, I feel that artwork is obviously part of our moments in time, right? It becomes part of our family and our heirlooms. It also builds a bigger connection to our communities as well. Rose? I'm going to talk real fast about a couple of experiences that we've had in our communities as far as where we've brought in young learners and families and community members as well. I was fortunate to head up this particular project in Spearfish, this mural project in 2018, 2019. And my students came to me and said, "We want to do a mural." This was not a project that I put on them. I brought in mural artists to kind of help us figure out the process. We learned the process together. We created a whole community within our campus as far as, okay, this is the process, but we want to make this even bigger. How do we engage children? How do we engage residents in nursing homes? How to create a mural? So what we did is we developed a process in which we could paint on cloth. We rolled up this cloth. We brought it to different spaces. We kind of created this as a giant paint by number, in which people can be all around in groups working and painting together. And we ended up creating a very accessible project. I wrote lots of grants. You can see some of the granting funders over this 2-year process of putting this all together. And we ended up having over 500 people helping paint this particular mural. So it wasn't just one or two people making this. This was an entire community engaged effort. I still have students coming to Black Hill State that said, "I worked on this as a middle school student," or "I worked on this as a high school student." And so they remember these experiences. Children still remember the time when they were able to put paint to the cloth, and then they see this every single day in the community. Rose, go ahead. And here you can see some of the sections of this mural laid out in some of the classroom communities in which the children were working together and trying to figure out, okay, this is a color that I should put here or there. And so we actually had the assistance of Spearfish High School, Middle School, Creekside, West Elementary. We had Belfish schools. We had Sturgis schools, all helping and participating in this giant process, as well as different elderly age facilities as well. So, Rose, next. We also invited other community members to come into public painting sessions at the Matthews Opera House. And so we have different people coming in and working on various parts of this big giant mural process. Next. Here we are unrolling it on the football field, just kind of doing a test run to see how things connect and intersect before doing some touch-ups. Next. And then I think this next one, yep, after the install day, just a big group photo, also to kind of give you an idea of the scale of the project. It was over 60 feet wide, by 30 something feet tall. So, next. Another mural that we just recently completed, this one is in the Bi-State Pet Food Pantry serving the St. Louis area, where I'm originally from. And this one was inspired by obviously pets, and the idea is how we can create a kind of a welcoming environment for people who are in need, and keeping pets with their humans. And so again, trying to create welcoming spaces for people, is a giant role for art, right? Trying to create inclusive and welcoming, even in times of need. Next. Here's the before. This is the wall that, unfortunately, as you can kind of see, that was in the pet food pantry. It was just a very blank, stale wall. And so we wanted to, again, create something that was a more inviting for people in need. And this was shortly after the install, so much more better. Next. Okay. My students have also been involved with working with the Northern Hills Training Center, a facility in Spearfish that helps individuals that have special abilities to be able to become sustaining and work with people in the and engage with people in the community. And so they every year they do a chili bowl fundraiser, and we have been helping them with creating their own objects, painting their own bowls, creating their own bowls, painting their bowls, to be able to help them put on their fundraiser to raise funds for more events and more wonderful activities with the Northern Hills Training Center. So this is some of their own bowls that we just facilitated with the individuals and residents at the Northern Hills Training Center. Next. And just yesterday, this picture was taken. We have been working with Evans Park and Spearfish as part of a larger goal for murals and Spearfish City Parks programs, to create better art spaces within our city parks. These are communities. This is a community project in which we actually had children as young as 3 or 4 painting sections on this wall. They are engaged in, with being helped, of course, engaged in doing something that contributes back and gives back to their communities. And the goal is again to allow people in the community to say, "I did this. I was part of this. I was something bigger." And so we've had about, I would say, over 50 people coming in and out just on Sunday, helping slap some paint on the wall, within the designs itself. Next. And we'll be painting again this weekend, from 10 to 4 on Saturday, and then Sunday, whenever we finish. We got pretty far this past weekend, but our goal is to be completely done with it this next weekend. So just kind of a shameless plug. If you want to be involved in some community and help strengthen the community, you are certainly welcome to come to Evans Park and help us paint. So that's this weekend as well, 10 to 4. Next. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Desi, for all of that. And I think at the end, I'm going to drop in the chat kind of a summary of all of those different ways that you guys can take what Desi said and collaborate with the community, right? With the children and push out and bring in their art voices and honor the children's art voices. So I'm going to drop that in the chat. I was brainstorming as you were speaking, Desi. So let's turn it over to Jen.
Hey, so Desi kind of mentioned before how art is inclusive and we want it to be inclusive. So this section here kind of rolls out on that a little bit. This is, cultural expression. Children's art reflects their identity, their culture, their community. So encouraging open-ended, culturally responsive art experiences will allow children to see themselves and others meaningfully represented. So. Okay, so art is wonderfully rich in culture. It's a universal language. Children understand and express feelings through images even before they master words. They naturally express themselves through drawing, painting, dancing, movement before they can develop strong verbal or writing skills. Art transcends language barriers. It allows every child to tell their story, regardless of their background. It allows children to communicate their thoughts and emotions that they might not have the vocabulary for yet. And especially if you have a diverse classroom, art can provide a way for your children with different language backgrounds to connect and be understood. Allowing cultural identity through creative expression. Children are able to share traditions, experiences, and symbols from their cultural background. They bring their family cultures with them into the classroom through food and language, clothing, dances, celebrations, and values. Art gives them a way to express those elements in a way that affirms who they are. When we encourage them to bring their own culture into their artwork, we send the message that their background matters. So, kind of an invitation for your classroom. You can have your children create a family flag using drawings and symbols that represent their home or traditions. You can even put it together and make kind of like a patchwork quilt. That's kind of a nice visual for a classroom. It's always nice to have parents volunteer to come in and share pictures or artwork, even music from their culture as well. Storytelling, it's not just reading aloud. It can happen through painting, drawing, collages, and dramatic play. Art can be a form of narrative, even in early childhood. Children often draw pictures that tell a sequence or a story, even if they don't label it as such. And then just asking children to explain their artwork can build narrative thinking, vocabulary, and their confidence in sharing their ideas. Creating a safe space for their expression. So art should be open-ended, non-judgmental, to allow children to be able to explore their identity and their emotions safely. Not all children will want to share everything, and that's okay. What's important is just giving them the freedom to explore and express at their own pace and to feel supported when they do so. Let the children lead their creative process again, rather than aiming for a right result or a targeted outcome. You can use open-ended prompts like create something that reminds you of home. Again, avoiding overly structured or craft template activities that focus on the final product. Representation matters. Exposing children to diverse art, music, and stories helps build empathy and cultural awareness. Children do notice who is and isn't represented in stories and pictures and activities in the classroom. So including diverse artists, cultural crafts, and stories will help children see themselves reflected and help them learn to appreciate others. It also opens up conversations about differences in a positive and respectful way. It's always good to feature books and posters and art displays all around the classroom that reflect a wide range of cultures. Some more practical ideas that you can use for your classroom. You can have multicultural art stations where you rotate materials that represent different cultural styles. You can have a family culture project where you ask families to send photos or cultural items, or talk to their child about a tradition and let the kids share with the class. They can use that as inspiration to create art. You can display it in like a culture area in the classroom. When we give children space to explore their identities and stories through art, we nurture not only their creativity, but also their sense of self and belonging. Art becomes a tool for connection, expression, and learning. So next here, we're going to talk a little bit about exposing children to famous art. and this is really fun, one of my favorite things to do. Famous art isn't just decoration, it's also a rich storytelling tool that can reflect diverse cultures, histories, and worldviews. It helps children understand that beauty and meaning exist across cultures, and it provides early exposure to different ways of life and thought. So famous art helps support cultural expression. It can be used as a bridge. Famous artwork comes from all over the world, different time periods. It kind of gives children a window into diverse ways of living and expressing. Including art from around the world helps normalize diversity and sets the foundation for inclusive attitudes. Famous art includes cultural symbols and perspectives, and when children see famous artworks from around the world, they begin to recognize cultural traditions. They're learning that people can express their ideas differently across cultures, and then they can see their own identities and backgrounds reflected and learn about others as well. Um, if just kind of a teaching tip, if you're exposing them to different pieces, you can ask, what do you think is happening in this picture? Does it remind you of anything you've ever seen? And maybe it'll just kind of, trigger a story, or they can share a little bit about, what their grandparents are like or where they've come from. So visual art is an accessible cultural entry point. Again, it kind of transcends language barriers, making it especially powerful for multilingual children from diverse backgrounds. It's a nonverbal avenue for children to connect, and they don't need language to respond to art. Famous artworks are naturally engaging. A lot of them have bold colors, interesting shapes, and human faces that spark curiosity. So it's a good conversation starter. Connecting children to their own cultural backgrounds encourages their personal cultural expression. When famous art reflects their own heritage, it promotes pride and identity. And then when it reflects others' cultures, it can help build empathy and understanding. Um, let's see. So, fostering respect and curiosity. Preschoolers are naturally curious, and by showing them famous art from a variety of cultures, it encourages respectful curiosity and then discussion about differences and similarities. And you can add in those high-level questions here too. Where do you think this painting comes from? What do you notice about their clothing? Have you ever seen anything like this in your home or somewhere else? It helps children see beyond their own world. When exposed to work by artists from other backgrounds, children learn that people live in different ways and all cultures create beauty and meaning. And there's so many different ways to express your feelings, your stories, and your ideas. So, in the next slide, I have a couple examples of some famous art that you can kind of bring to your classroom and teach a little bit about certain things.
Skipped way ahead. I apologize,
Let's
Jen.
see. Oh, you're fine.
Okay,
Right here.
there we go.
Perfect. Okay. So, the first one is an untitled piece by Jean-Michel Basquiat. He is an African American Haitian artist. And this might be nice to use as his art shows a lot of storytelling and emotion. So you can kind of take that avenue with it. Hokusai, the Great Wave, right here is a Japanese piece. There's a lot of nature and movement in these art styles, which is something you can discuss about. Let's see, the next one is a Faith Ringgold, and this is like a quilt, which is nice. She's an African American artist and does a lot of quilting. There's a lot of family represented in the pieces, which, is kind of another good thing to discuss with your kiddos. Henri Rousseau is French. He did the football players down there on the left. Um, a lot of his art is very imaginative and fun to look at. And then the last one here is The Great Journey by Norval Mousseau. He's a Canadian artist, and he does a lot of like spiritual connections to animals and nature. So, and then the next slide here, you can use art as a launch pad for cultural activities. So you can rotate famous art prints in your classroom. Um, it's always nice to kind of include a label with the artist and where they're from, just so you can discuss that and talk about it. Again, asking open-ended questions. What do you notice? How do you think they made that? How does it make you feel? You can use it as kind of a way to paint in the style of a famous artist or collage in their style, just to inspire, different ways of creating. You can also invite families to share art from their culture at home. Um, you know, it can just spark activities that deepen your cultural expressions. Here are a few pieces that I pulled out. Here's another Henri Matisse. This is a French piece. It's it translates to the snail, but it's just a collage of bright colors and shapes. So it's fun to look at. Yayo Kasuma is the next. She's a Japanese artist, and this one's the pumpkin made with dots, painting patterns. So again, just something kind of fun to explore. Um, Another Untitled by Jean-Michel Basquiat. Um, he does a lot of abstract storytelling art. I Let's see, the Tree of Life down there is an Austrian gold foil collage by Gustav Klimt. And the last one there is just an Aboriginal dot art from an indigenous Australian tribe. So dot painting and using natural themes or shapes. Just different ways of doing art. Each of these ideas and styles are simple enough for children to feel inspired and not overwhelmed if they're wanting to create something kind of similar. So just kind of key messages to leave with someone teaching and help in the classroom. Cultural expression in art starts with exposure. Children don't need deep historical knowledge to respond meaningfully to the art. When teachers introduce famous artworks thoughtfully, they're helping children understand and appreciate the world. And that starts in your own classroom. And then it just opens the door to cultural understanding, personal expression, and early appreciation of diversity. One thing to note too, be sure to proof some of these works of art before showing your class. Don't just do a Google search because some of them have a little bit mature content. So we don't want anything inappropriate happening. So just a little caveat there. And then finally, we wanted to throw in a little bit of the pyramid model because we're real big on that here at ECC, but most of you are probably pretty familiar with this. The pyramid model is used for supporting social emotional competence in infants and young children. There's 3 tiers. The first tier, you're nurturing your relationships and your high quality environment for all children. If you move up a level on the pyramid, this is support for children who need a little extra help with navigating their social emotional behavior. And then the very top tier is individualized support for children who have persistent challenges. But you can connect art to this model here. At tier 1, which would be a universal support, art is a tool for inclusive, nurturing environments. We kind of talked about it's promoting social emotional expression. It encourages social skills through collaboration. It builds a sense of identity and belonging. It helps develop fine motor skills, routine following, and they're just helpful for all children in the classroom. Moving up a level, you can use art as a targeted emotional and social strategy. Art offers a nonverbal way to express your emotions, especially for children with limited verbal skills or if they have social anxiety. It can facilitate peer interactions in structured art games or partner projects. It can help with making friends. It also allows for guided emotional conversations with an adult. So just asking them to tell them about their art. How does it make you feel? things like that. And then intensive interventions up at the top. You can use art in an individualized support plan. So it can help serve as part of behavioral intervention plan or a therapeutic strategy. It can be integrated into play therapy or art therapy. And it really helps track emotional progress over time through children's artwork. So art supports self-regulation and mindfulness. It provides a safe outlet for the emotions. It encourages positive teacher and child interactions, and it supports individualized learning. It's adaptable across all cultures and abilities. So it's just a great tool to have.
Thank you, Jen. I love that.
Yes.
Love that slide. Okay, back over to Desi for our last principle.
I think you forgot to hit unmute, Desi.
Thank you. I knew that would happen at one point. So we know that art is so essential to our children's learning about the world around us, right? And obviously, art helps develop our visual acuity, understanding our visual world around us, and developing even our language and helping to can make those connections. So why is it so important to advocate about for art? We want our students to become innovators, right? We want our students to, or and our young learners to become the future movers, shakers, and creative thinkers. Innovation is the thing that's really helps drive the world. And what drives innovation? Imagination, right? And of course, we want to encourage that. So therefore, art is essential. Even if you are into the K through 12, you will see art standards. Even in South Dakota, we have our set curriculum standards, and every grade level has benchmarks for standards for meeting our goals. Next slide, please. Okay. So if you did want to get involved, here are a couple of resources beyond, I mean, the many multitudes of resources that exist out there. The National Art Education Association, NAEA, has some fantastic resources, pre-K all the way through 12th grade, and even higher education. It is a source for a base membership, but you can also has very large conferences. We do a state conference as well for the South Dakota Art Education Association, SDAEA. And we actually just had our statewide conference last weekend. You'll always find our state conferences in October. And I believe BHSU will be hosting the next SDAEA conference in 2027 is our next rotation. And we certainly invite any teacher, not just our teachers, but anyone that is interested in working with young learners in the arts to attend a conference and learn new strategies. Everything from how to use air dry clay was presented, all the way up to printmaking methods was just presented last week. And so there's always wonderful topics on all different art methods, as well as some great presentations and great artists that are presenting those things. We also have the South Dakota Arts Council and the Arts South Dakota. Both of those two are kind of together. Arts South Dakota is the marketing arm of the South Dakota Arts Council. The Arts Council offers a lot of grants to teachers, not just art teachers, but teachers, anyone that wants to help learners and help build art communities. There are funding for new programs, funding for projects, funding for community groups. The Arts South Dakota and the Arts South Dakota and the South Dakota Arts Council are great resources for you. Also, under the Art South Dakota, we have a new group that we had just formed. We are calling this Arts Education Alliance South Dakota. The goal of that is to bring together all of the different arms of organizations that we have within our state to fall under one umbrella to collectively go to our stakeholders and our legislators to say, please support the arts. So, Arts Education Alliance South Dakota, AEASD, it's not just another organization, but we have representatives from Art South Dakota, representatives from South Dakota Art Education Association, representatives from the Bandmasters Association, Choir Association. We have one representative from a bunch of different branches of arts within our state that work together collectively. I serve on the board of this new organization. And again, our goal is to make one giant ask, make one giant representation of all of the arts to strengthen our voice in front of stakeholders, in front of our state legislation, to show that art is important to South Dakotans everywhere.
I love it. And I dropped the links to all of those
Great.
websites in the chat. So if you're interested in finding out more, I'm sure a lot of you heard that golden ticket word of grant that Desi mentioned. So go find out how you can get some money for new art supplies, a new easel, whatever it is, and maybe also chime in and do a little bit of advocacy for art in early childhood. Okay, let's hop over to pre-submitted questions. So, first one, I am self-admitted type A. How can I provide art experiences without stressing or overwhelming myself with the mess created? Desi or Jen, who would like to start first?
I can go ahead and start, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, I think surprisingly, a lot of artists are type A, and maybe a little bit of type B as well, and a little bit of messy. But anytime that we can do any kind of pre-planning, that's going to make your life easier. So something as simple as rolling down some roll paper or putting down some newspapers ahead of time, asking our young artists to draw a border inside a frame, and trying to keep the mess within that border. That way they're not painting and smearing paint across the table. Having that visual border inside their piece of paper is helpful. So just kind of thinking about those little helpful steps. When I first established my very first art classroom, what I did was I brought in a couple of my young cousins in. I was 22. I brought in my young cousins into my classroom and I said, okay, what kind of trouble can you guys get into? So I just let my cousins just sort of like kind of wreak havoc a little bit. They were family, so I could do it. But and this was over the summer before. But what that helped me think about is, okay, how do children operate in this space, right? How does a child see this? So there were definitely some things I needed to do, right? I had a kiln room. I had to make sure the kiln room was completely locked at all times. They, of course, was very curious what was behind the door. So talking to children about there's something behind the door that is a kiln. It is a great resource for us, but you are not allowed here for your safety. And just making sure that I had safety parameters. Things like putting a piece of tape on the floor around the paper cutter as a no-no zone, right? Those kinds of things. So just kind of being a little predictive will help you later on when it comes to stressing about messes and things like that. So use that type A personality to think ahead as far as what would be helpful for me, but also too, not to say, oh, let go of the type A personality. But when you get in and make a mess too, when you get in and make art, again, we facilitate these things, but kids find joy when their teachers make things too. And so when we can get in and we can make messes and we can say, okay, this is okay. Messes can be cleaned up. I can help. We all clean together, and the teacher helps clean too. That's a learning experience. So when everybody makes a mess and everybody cleans together, including the teacher, that is providing good role modeling for your students. Jen?
Jen, did you have anything to add to that one?
Um, do you want me to just tackle the second one since we're kind of
Sure, you sure can.
Running low on time. Um, I know a lot of parents love having crafts sent home. That's pretty normal. I feel like they want just a cute little something they can place on the fridge. Um, but I think part of our role as educators is to kind of help families understand the value of learning that goes on when we're in the process of exploring art. Um, Something we can do to kind of help that maybe is to document the process, maybe take pictures, write down quotes about what the children are saying while they're creating art, and then just maybe display that with the piece of art. Also, it might be a lot of these pieces are a little more abstract. But if you were to frame them or maybe even put a mat on them, it comes across sometimes as a little bit more professional, um, or maybe a piece that parents might be more willing to display at their house. So, if anyone has come across this personally, we do have a great resource that can be handed out to parents about the learning that goes on during open-ended projects and play. So if you're interested in a handout like that, just let us know and we can email you over a copy. I think it was put out by NAEYC. So
Perfect. I love it.
yeah.
I love that Jen touched on how you display the art too, because that's so important with, like Desi touched on, that it is something that parents hold on to then. I have on display in my house several pieces that my 11-year-old created because they're framed nicely and I get to think back to when he was 3 and 4. So um, beautiful answers, ladies. So, to wrap up this evening, just thanking everyone for coming tonight, and remembering that it's not about the materials, the mediums, it's about giving children the tools to express their creativity, to have engage in curiosity and meaning making. They get to test ideas, they get to make choices, and they get to communicate their feelings. So, those are the beautiful things that come from art, and hopefully, you will allow the children to engage in that and just relax your own type A if you're out there tonight and see the beauty in that mess. And then, like Desi said, maybe even engage in it too. And you'll find some beauty and some healing in that process too. So just remember, art is not an extra. It's a language of learning. It's a pathway to all of these beautiful things: self-regulation, connection, conversation. It supports their identity and fuels their imagination. So thank you for all the work you guys do every day. It does not go unnoticed. And together, you're not just supporting art, but you are supporting the growth of our humanity. We're growing little humans. You guys are doing the most important work, right? Um, We are at about 3 minutes. So if there were any wrap-up questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat unless you want to hop off of mute quick. I'm going to navigate over to the evaluation. If you guys are unfamiliar with where to find our additional early childhood connection trainings, our website, I will drop that in the chat as well while you guys are doing the evaluation. So here is the eval. You can scan that code. I will also drop the link in the chat if you would prefer to go that way. And then, as always, when you're done with the evaluation, you are free to go. I'm going to turn it over to each of our experts for a little closing remarks, though. So go ahead, Desi.
Okay, I turned off the mute. Um, Thank you guys so much for inviting me to come. I really appreciate the time to be here, and I hope that you guys just allow your kids to be free and enjoy the art making process. It is not hard. It should be a fun thing, and it is obviously a very essential thing.
Thank you so much for joining us, Desi. It was beautiful. Jen?
Yeah. I also want to thank everybody for coming tonight. It was a really cool experience getting to do one of these. Um, yeah, I hope everybody just got a little bit inspired and just kind of understand how important art is in children's life and adults' lives as well. So we just want to foster that and keep it going. And again, echo what these ladies have said and just thank you guys for putting in the work and helping nurture their creativity every day in the classroom. So, yeah, thank you, Desi, for co-teaching with me. And Rose, you do so much work into these webinars. A lot of it is behind the scenes, and I just wanted to bring attention to that and just say thank you for all that you do to put these on because they turn out really great. So,
Thank you,
yes.
ladies.
Yeah, thank you, Rose. You really did a fantastic job of putting all of this information together. This is a big topic. And so, sorry we went over a little over time tonight, but Rose, you did a fantastic job. And Jen, your information was so on point on every point. So thank you guys.
Yeah, it came together beautifully. So I'm thrilled with it and I'm excited to go watch it like I always do on our YouTube channel. So if you're still hanging out, I did want to share this last video. This is something that I used when I was teaching. These are called Mati and Dada, and they're just little video clips around 5 minutes long, and they explore famous artists and types of mediums and artwork. And like Jen had said, it was honestly one of my favorite parts of teaching was exposing children and students to famous pieces of art and artists. Because if you think about it, sometimes we are that first exposure, right? Like we don't know if they've ever been to an art gallery before. So not that you're not trying to think about all of the other realms of development, but now you have this responsibility too. But have fun with it. It's beautiful. And so this takes it in a way that they can be hooked and interested. So we're going to watch just a little bit while you guys are doing the eval. Feel free to hop off whenever you guys are done and just know that we appreciate you guys.
Ping pong.
Oh, we're going to have a oh, apology.
Subscribe.
I'm going to stick ahead. So how these episodes are all set up.
The Eiffel Tower, a most magnificent feat. You see it being put together piece by piece, and in the end, voila, one masterpiece.
It looks very different up close.
Indeed, it is made of little pieces.
Ooh, look, Dada. Look at this.
Dada crazy! A painting of colored dots.
Dots? What are you talking about, Dada? It's a beautiful sunny day by the water.
Up close it's one thing, and far away it's another, like the Eiffel Tower.
Bit by bit, dot by dot, I constructed a whole painting.
Monsieur Seurat, you must be really, really patient.
Mais oui, it took me 2 years to paint this. I call it A Sunday Afternoon on the Island of La Grande Jatte.
And all made out of colored dots.
Yes, instead of mixing the colors first, then painting them on, I let the eyes of the person looking mix the colors instead.
Like that color disc, Dada.
Except this painting isn't spinning, so that's why I am!
Mais non, the spinning won't help. You must go close and far away.
Okay, that sounds better, and I won't get so dizzy.
Yellow and blue dots.
Look like green leaves.
And that lady's purple pom-pom.
Red and blue dots make purple. Magic, wow!
And there's so much to see in the painting.
A monkey! I like monkeys.
Oh, Monsieur Seurat, you have another painting.
Hey, look! The dog
Okay, so if you just search for Mati and Dada on YouTube, you'll find a rather large collection where they meet tons of different famous artists. So even if you yourself aren't confident in what artists to expose them to and making sure that they're safe, like Jen said, this is a great curated list that you can start with. So anybody have any thoughts or questions? I see a lot of you have already finished up, so I appreciate that. And like I said, you are free to go as soon as you do. And experts, you guys are free to go at any time too. Thank you again, both of you.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rose. Appreciate it. Bye, guys.
Bye. Have a good night.